An automotive muffler, also called a resonator, is a sound dampening device used to baffle, reduce, or otherwise change the noise created by an internal combustion engine. The exhaust system on the Cherokee uses a log-style manifold routed into a single downpipe, a catalytic converter, and a muffler. The muffler lowers the decibel level of a running engine a significant amount, and in certain states have been required on vehicles all the way since 1905. But that's boring. In this video, I'm going to be replacing the original factory stock muffler with a Flowmaster Super 40 Delta Flow, and alongside it a new tailpipe and both rear hangers. After losing a race to another Cherokee, I've been publicly shamed and humiliated, and by making my exhaust really loud, I'm hoping I can suppress my insecurities, because I won't be able to hear what you're saying. What? The stock muffler and tailpipe on the Cherokee are welded together in one big piece, which bolts to a flange right after the catalytic converter. You can chance removing these two 15mm nuts. As you can see, I was miraculously able to get them off, but if you can't, that's totally fine too. We need to cut this flange off anyway to adapt an aftermarket muffler on here. I also cut the tailpipe off the muffler to make it easier to get everything out of here. The front tailpipe hanger is a simple piece of rubber, and it's deceivingly easy looking to remove. You can fight with this thing for hours, or spray some WD-40 in it, and then using a big screwdriver as a wedge, you should be able to pry the hanger right off.
Easy. It would appear as if, while I was cutting on the tailpipe, my rear hanger simply broke off, so that wouldn't have lasted much longer.
The rear hanger is a simple rubber hook on the 84 through 98 models, but in 1999 this changed to the style here with a metal hook held by a rubber band to a bracket shared with the fuel tank heat shield. Because I'm going to replace this bracket, I'll just unbolt it from the frame. If you look into the catalytic converter, you can get a vague feeling on how it's doing. The mesh in here should be clean and uniform. All these little specks are clogs that shouldn't be there, but after decades of driving and the equivalent miles it would take to get to the moon, this doesn't look bad at all. With everything out, it's your predetermined destiny to start the engine up without a muffler on it just to see what it sounds like. And in a parallel universe, you could use some random adapter pieces to make a side exit exhaust that looks badass. But in this universe, we continued with the install. You may have noticed I snapped off a bolt in the frame rail that holds the rear tailpipe hanger up. The nuts those bolts thread into are not welded to the frame. They're on what's called a nut strip, which just sits in there. I thus need to replace said nut strip, and to get that out, the rear bumper has to come off. Now, my rear bumper is conveniently dented in such a way that it's not a matter of removing the 8 bolts that secure it normally. I first had to cut through the plastic end cap to separate it, as unbolting it from the bumper wasn't an option because of the way it was bent. These end caps usually have 1/4 inch bolt at the bottom of the fender and a 10mm on the underside attaching them to the bumper. They then slide backwards off this riveted rail.
Yeah, this is a really common spot for them to rot out. I'm gonna try to cut that, I guess. Doo-doo-doo-doo, average Jeep day. Alright, look at that. We got a perfect hole right there. The other side wasn't nearly as bad. And these things usually have these weird plastic bags in them. You might think this is the previous owner trying to smuggle drugs over the border, but this is actually just sound dampening. It's just like foam in a bag. You don't need those.
With the end caps off, you can get the bumper off, which has 4 bolts on each of its 2 brackets, accessed from the underside. You can see the nut strip through this hole here, and getting it out was actually pretty hard because it somehow got all mangled and twisted in there for no reason. I pried at it with a screwdriver for a good few minutes until it came out.
Okay, how this thing got so mangled inside there, I have no idea.
Then just slide in the new nut strip, which I've decided to replace with carriage bolts and washers instead. They work better with a trailer hitch, which I'm going to be taking this opportunity to install. I used a magnet on a stick to guide each bolt into place.
Okay, and finally it goes heat shield, trailer hitch, exhaust hanger, in that order from the top down. If you don't have a trailer hitch, these bolts are going to go to 55 foot-pounds. If you do have a hitch, the hitch bolts go to 70 foot-pounds.
This little deviation turned into a 2-day ordeal where I also decided to replace my leaf springs because everything else in the area was apart, so, why not? But now we have our new tailpipe hanger and can get back to the muffler project. If your exhaust hanger type doesn't need this metal hook, it's standard procedure to just cut it off. I don't actually know what the changeover is for this rear hanger type. It seems to vary a lot through the years, so you'll just have to see which type is on your Jeep particularly. It's tight, but possible, to get the new tailpipe in place without unbolting anything, as I demonstrate after the rear end is all assembled here. Just rotate it as you move it over the axle. The new front tailpipe hanger just pops on with a hint of WD-40. And the rear one requires a new exhaust clamp. Just leave that loose for now. With the tailpipe installed, test fit it on the new muffler. You'll note it's obviously way too short, so also test fit some extension pipe, mark where it needs to be cut, and cut it to length. You can use sandpaper or a file to get all the shavings off it. Now this may be a matter of trial and error. Try not to cut too much length off your extension piece because it's a lot harder to add more than cut more off. With the rear hanger just loosely supporting the tailpipe, I was able to hook it into place. Then just put clamps on each connection point and evenly tighten the nuts back and forth. It is common practice to angle the studs off to the side or up, to prevent them from facing in a direction where they'll get things caught on them, but I don't really care.
I pretty much nailed that first try. Just make sure it's not going to hit the parking brake cable or the shock or the axle or anything. And then we can just bolt it all down. Alright, so I got the exhaust all hooked up. I still don't have a rear bumper. I can't really reuse mine because it was damaged. I'm going to try to get that figured out today. But without further ado, I'm really excited to see what this sounds like, so screw the rear bumper. Everything gets too hot, just want to make sure there's no leaks in any of your couplings. I don't hear anything, but we definitely got a leak here. You can see the water coming out. Water is a totally normal byproduct of combustion, and usually mufflers will have a little weep hole in them to let that water drain out. This one doesn't, so I think I'm going to have to get another clamp. But other than that, looks all good.
you have the tools, exhaust work is pretty easy, and it doesn't take much to make the 4-liter sound pretty good. My Jeep probably sounds a little different than most every other Cherokee because mine has 3 catalytic converters and they dampen the noise quite a bit on their own. At first I didn't think I was going to like the side exit exhaust, but here in Florida, where literally everyone has straight pipe power strokes, it was completely silent next to them, so it wasn't that bad. It was kind of obnoxious in the mornings, but damn did it sound good on engine brake. But yeah, not having a muffler isn't really legal in a lot of places, so it wasn't sustainable long term. Might put it back on someday though. The Flowmaster Super 40 Delta Flow sounds pretty much the same as no muffler, just a lot quieter. I like it, but honestly, I do think I liked my old Super 44 a little better on the XJ. I like them both, and I'd take either of them over a boring stock exhaust, so I'm happy. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in some other place.